Silence. Seems like it's the one thing we just don't have in this world anymore. We're always connected. Phones are always on. And the worst thing of all, mainstream media. We just can't seem to get away from the noise of mainstream media. Well, not anymore. Now you have the Unmedia Media, the Experts Podcast, with your host, Jonathan Gilliam. That's me, former Navy SEAL, Federal Air Marshal, security contractor, and FBI special agent. I have met a tremendous amount of people along the way that will bring you real expert analysis. Not just talking heads, not just ideologues, and not just young people because they're good looking and we want to put them on the show. No, none of that. These are real experts that we bring on here. And if I don't know what I'm talking about, I go find the people that do. Trust me, this is the show that you want to tell everybody about, because when the headlines are lying, we're telling the truth. The Experts Podcast. Tell everybody about it, and let's start the show.
President, you tweeted earlier linking the closing of the country to your election success in November. Is this Easter timeline based on your political interests?
What do you mean by my election success? No.
You tweeted. You said that the media wants the country to remain closed to hurt your odds of being reelected.
The media would like to see me do poorly in the election. I think
lawmakers and economists on both sides of the aisle have said that reopening the country by Easter is not a good idea. What is that plan based on?
Just so you understand. Are you ready? I think there are certain people that would like it not to open so quickly. I think there are certain people that would like it to do financially poorly because they think that would be very good as far as defeating me at the polls. And I don't know if that's so, but I do think it's so that there are people in your profession that would like that to happen. I think it's very clear. I think it's very clear that there are people in your profession that write fake news. You do. She does. There are people in your profession that write fake news. They would love to see me for whatever reason, because we've done one hell of a job. Nobody's done the job that we've done. And it's lucky that you have this group here right now for this problem, or you wouldn't even have a country left.
This is Jonathan Gilliam back in on the Experts Podcast. Sing it, Melissa. Dropping some hammers down. And you know what day it is. Probably a good day to talk about the coronavirus, right? So, I wanted to bring back on Dr. Michael Lucarini, Arizona Dr. Mike, from Summit MedPeds. You can find him if you just go to the website, which is what is it?
It is ArizonaDrMike.com.
There you go. And so we were talking today. It's been about a week and a half, I think, since the last time I had you on here. And
yeah, just about.
Yeah, and so I think it's time, one, for an update, because I personally don't think that these daily briefings that we're getting from the White House are really doing a whole lot of good when it comes to the common person. It seems as though those briefings are more for the media and for, I really don't know who they're for, because it's not really doing, I'm watching them and I'm not seeing a whole lot out of it. In fact, it's getting quite boring now. And most of the time I just kind of put it on the background and listen to it and, to the side while I do other things. But I think that people need another voice to help explain where we are versus where we were, where we could go, and what all the hubbub is about ventilators. And, it's hard to decipher what de Blasio and the lies he tells. Cuomo was, I got to be honest, very impressive the way he was reacting to this. I mean, it's important not to forget the fact that he's okay with killing babies, but he was actually, his demeanor and the way he was doing his press conferences was actually quite impressive, for who he is. Now he's gone off the deep end. and then you have the president, who everything is just happy and super spectacular in the world. And so all of them are confusing a lot of people out there. And quite frankly, if you listen to this podcast and you tell me that, oh, I love the president's pressers every day, well, you either don't have a brain in your head, or you're not hearing the same press conference that I'm hearing, because it's not explaining. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the common people out there. So with that being said, Doctor, explain this all to us.
You bet. Absolutely, Jonathan. I think you're right. I think that what we've seen in the last two pressers with the president is really another iteration, another repeat of basic information that we already know. But there are some hidden facts that have not been brought out front that I think are very, very important. First of all, for your listeners, so that they know who I am, I have a private practice in internal medicine here in a small community in Mesa, Arizona. And so my experience, 22 years, for many years went to the hospital, and now have not gone to the hospital care for patients. I've seen patients in the ICU, cared for patients in the ICU, coordinated with specialists, intensivists, pulmonologists, cardiologists, and most of my practice for the last 7 years has been in the community. However, that knowledge and understanding doesn't escape me. So the real issue specifically about where we are now is we have reached an unfortunate milestone. We have now overtaken Italy as a country with the most infections identified for COVID-19. Not unexpected. When you look at the population in the United States, of course, we have 330 plus million people. We certainly would have exploded and at some point reached the unfortunate threshold of having the most COVID-19 infections. What worries me about that number is that when we look at a logarithmic curve, it's doubling over a period of time. That has continued. What we heard last week from the president and from the experts, Dr. Fauci and others, is that we wanted to flatten that curve. We have not seen a flattening of that curve yet. And every day that goes by that we do not see a flattening of that curve, it means that the number of infections will continue to rise for at least another 2 weeks. That's very concerning. That means we'll have hundreds of thousands likely that will be infected up through the summertime, and it projects, in my opinion, that we will see a rise in the number of infections and a need for extraordinary measures of infection control, such as having restrictions in travel and even being required to remain at home and slowing the economy right up through the end of April and probably in through the end of May. So having said that, what do we do now to try to not overwhelm the healthcare system? We hear a lot, as you said, about ventilators, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about the physiology of ventilators, but we have in the country, it's estimated, about 180,000 ventilators available, more to be coming, as I understand, and we have about 60,000 beds, intensive care unit beds for adults. And those intensive care unit beds exclude, of course, neonatal intensive care units for newborn babies. That's about 20,000. So 60,000 ICU beds in the country, 180,000 ventilators. So at first, one would think, wow, that's a pretty good ratio. We have 3 ventilators per bed. We should be able to take care of the number of patients in the country. Well, part of the problem, and it's a significant problem that we're just starting to learn more about, is that it's one thing to have a ventilator, but someone actually has to turn the knobs on that ventilator, make fine adjustments in pressure, volume, frequency of ventilation in response to the patient's condition that can change on a minute-to-minute basis. And those are experts in medicine, and not just physicians like me as an internal medicine physician in the community, but physicians that have had years of specialized training in intensive care, where they actually do look at those patients and evaluate those patients, put stethoscope to chest, look at the patient, see the lab results, and make those fine adjustments to keep that person just at the precipice of life, in many cases, for hours and days at a time, to give them a shot at survival. We do not have, Jonathan, that level and that number of trained physicians ready to be able to handle the volume of patients on ventilators.
Well, does anybody?
No, it's not community to community. We're talking at a national level here. So no, we don't have them. Even if you take Bob Johnson, who's a retired family practice doc and is 72 years of age in Ottumwa, Iowa, and he says, I want to help, it would take him months to have a refresher course in ventilator management. It's not something that is viable. We don't have the trained staff.
So in Italy, in Italy, would it have made any difference if they had double the respirators or the
great question. That is the
ventilators?
That is the ventilators. That's the question that has to be answered. No, they would not have made a difference for them, especially given the fact that a number of the physicians on the front lines early on in their course did not have or did not take the time to protect themselves, and they lost an incredible number of physicians due to the death itself from COVID-19.
So do you think that Cuomo and de Blasio and that these people actually even know this?
I have to tell you, I think they're politicians at the highest level. 2 weeks ago, Mr. de Blasio was promoting the New York Life, telling people, go to the theaters, go to the nightlife, go out and socialize as much as you. That was 2 weeks ago that he was saying that. And I fell off my chair and said, good gracious, poor New York. I feel terrible for New York with a mayor who says that. I don't think he knows it, but I also don't think I also don't think he has the wisdom to realize I better keep my mouth shut because the medical professionals are the ones that are on the front lines here. So Mr. Cuomo said the other day, Jonathan, I want 30,000 ventilators.
Right.
Well, that's fine. You might as well ask for 30,000 Hershey bars so that you can hand out to people because it's not going to help if you don't have the manpower trained, specialized to be able to manage those ventilators. It's just not going to help.
Now, is this a place where bringing in the National Guard, although there's not that many corpsmen in the National Guard, and most of the doctors that are in the National Guard or the military, a lot of the doctors are they're almost like part-time. I mean, sometimes they're fully, I guess in active duty military, they may be full-time, but they still have to do their regular job.
That's right. And physicians who are intensive care physicians are not part-time. These are physicians who work full-time, either in the military or in the private sector, all the time to keep their skills very well honed. This is not this is like being, if you will, a SEAL, a Navy SEAL. When you were a Navy SEAL, Jonathan, you were not a Navy SEAL part-time. You were a Navy SEAL 24/7, ready to go at the peak of your ability and understanding of how to function as a Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
Intensive care unit physicians are exactly the same way in their field of healthcare. So it's not a part-time thing. They actually have to do it, and they have to do it consistently. New York currently has 3,000 beds that are ICU beds, the entire city in all the hospitals. They'll move it to 4,000. It'll be great if they get it to 5,000. It'll be a miracle within 30 days if they get it to 6,000 ICU beds within the next month or two to accommodate the number of illnesses that are going to hit them. Governor Cuomo was asking for 30,000 ventilators. Governor Cuomo, what do you want with 30,000 ventilators? More than half of them will end up being decorations on the side and do nothing for you when you don't have the staff well trained to be able to function and to utilize those devices.
And
so
again,
let them go to other areas.
And tell everybody, what do these ventilators do? See, that's an important thing because most people think it's like, you see the machine. I guarantee you this is what most people think it is. In the movies or on TV, you see the machine where it goes, it's got the little spongy, the little accordion thing in there that helps breathe, and they just turn it on and leave them there and it helps breathe. But that's not the case.
That's absolutely right. And I'm glad you asked.
What is that? What is that thing?
So that is so when you look at the little accordion thing in movies, that is a device that is reflective of the air that's moving in and out in positive pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So normally when you and I are taking a breath in this conversation, we have a diaphragm that pulls down and air comes into our lungs through our nose and mouth. And then when the diaphragm moves up, it pushes it out.
Right.
When a person is deathly ill, or for other reasons, if they're going to have an operation on their belly and we anesthetize them, we make them unconscious, they lose the drive to breathe on their own. And as a consequence, we can tell by blood work as a patient comes in and they're getting sicker and sicker. For example, with COVID-19, we can see that the acidity in the blood is going up, that the oxygen level is dropping, and the patient is losing their ability through their lungs to function, to get carbon dioxide out and to get oxygen in. So we are going to do that for them and buy them time. We insert a tube into their lungs, either through the nose or through the mouth, down into the trachea. There's a small cuff, a small little balloon that is blown up that makes a full seal inside the trachea. And the ventilator now pushes oxygenated air down into the lungs and then extracts it, brings it back out to remove carbon dioxide. So we replace the normal respiration and ventilation of the lungs by mechanically simulating outside of the body this respiratory capacity. And it can buy lots of time for a patient to try to survive as we intervene. And it's on average, we're seeing that patients, if they're going to survive, once they're on a ventilator with COVID-19, it takes about 2 weeks, Jonathan.
Wow.
So it takes a long time for that to happen.
And how do they, well, I'm going to ask that question in a minute, how they sterilize it. Don't get to that yet. But when we, when we look at these ventilators, okay, and tell me if this is the same thing that I was on. I had my appendix when I was in the FBI from eating too much Korean food. My appendix burst. And I was, I went to Cornell, okay, which is on the east side, Upper East Side. I went to Cornell, sat there. I got there at like, I don't know, 5 p.m. And I had been passing in and out of consciousness all day until I got a hold of my buddy who is a physician assistant, same guy who's on the front line, actually, out in Washington State. And he told me to press here and cough and do this. And he's like, yeah, your appendix are bad. You need to go to the hospital right now. And so I get in the car, drove myself there. And then they kept me there until 3 a.m. when they finally one guy was going to let me go home, or was going to make me go home. He thought I had gastrointestinal stuff. And then they had already ordered a scan. What is it? CT scan, I guess.
CAT scan. Yep.
Yeah.
CAT scan.
And so while he was going and discharging me, the other lady came up and said, I'm looking for Mr. Gilliam for a CAT scan. I said, let's go. So we went and did it. And they brought me out of that. And another doctor came up and said, well, I'm glad that they actually took you in there because looks like your appendix is bad and we need to do surgery. I was like, yeah, great. When's that going to happen? He goes, right now. So I find out 2 weeks later when I went back in that it had burst. So it burst while I was in there. And, but the thing was so when I come out of the surgery I woke up still on the table, still intubated. And I thought I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what was going on because I was out of it. And, I'm a warrior. My thought process was, what is preventing me from breathing? So I grabbed it.
Survival.
And I pulled the intubating tube out of my throat. Oh. And they launched across the room because I guess you can injure yourself like that. I didn't know. I was just like, I'm not breathing. And the guy's like, you got air. And I'm like, I don't have air. So I just pulled the thing out. So is that what I was on?
Yes, you were on a ventilator. You were intubated, probably through the mouth. Otherwise, yes, you were intubated, and you grabbed the tube, you pulled it out, and because you were essentially healthy, other than the appendix, you were able to breathe on your own because you were not sufficiently anesthetized. Now, that's not supposed to happen in the operating room.
Yeah, I found that out later.
Consciousness. Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. But it's a fine. It's a fine. I'll mention this too because in the intensive care unit, when a person's on the ventilator, part of the responsibility of the ICU physician is to keep the patient sedated sufficiently that if they want to try to breathe, they can try to breathe on their own. And the ventilator can tell us to what degree the patient is making an effort to breathe. That's always helpful for us to see how healthy they are and whether they're going to recover faster. So it is a remarkable art, and my hat's off to my colleagues who are trained particularly well for many, many years, well earned, to utilize and manipulate those machines for the benefit of patients. But it's not enough just to have ventilators sitting sitting next to a patient and have the janitor plug it in and turn it on. It just doesn't do that. So we have to match ventilators with capacity for the professionals capable of using them.
Excellent point. And I really tell you the truth, I don't think they probably have been told that. I would almost bet that they have not been told that.
That's
very
frightening.
Interesting. Yeah,
Right.
it's frightening, but it goes right along with lack of expertise and leadership and making sure that you have a full, well-rounded advisory group that are forward thinking these things. They just don't do it. But I'll tell you what, let's take a break real quick. We're going to come back and I'll tell you a little story about how I've seen things when you have leaders that aren't fully informed and the tragedy that can have. And then we want to get some more questions about COVID-19 answered by you, Doc. So hang on and we'll be right back. Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I know you've heard me talk about my best-selling book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. Well, maybe you haven't looked at the book or even considered getting it, but I'm going to tell you why you should reconsider that. This circumstance that we're in right now with the coronavirus is a perfect example of why you should be reading, and not just reading, but implementing Sheep No More and the tactics in it. You see, what the book does is it follows an attack and defend technique where you learn how the attacker targets you. You see, it doesn't matter if it's a virus or a pedophile or a rapist or a burglar. All attackers look for vulnerabilities that they can exploit to locate the avenue of approach to get to your criticalities. And they use the same standard operating procedures to find your critical areas and the times that are most critical for those areas. It doesn't matter who the attacker is, they all follow this process. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival shows you that process so that you can look at your life in sectors from the attacker's point of view, and then turn around and build better defenses for each one of those areas. It has 2 great workbooks that are also available, and I'm telling you right now, folks, we have had no complaints in over 2 years of people using this to make their life safer. So trust me, if you get this book, it will change your life. And if you can't order it on Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble, and if they are not delivering at this point, direct message me. We can get the books to you. Go to jonathantgilliam.com, and let's get back to the show. Trust me, Doc, as you've seen it in medicine, I've seen it in the military, I've seen it in law enforcement, where a perfect example on another level, they had bank robberies that were going on in New Jersey, in and around the New Jersey area. And they sent from the Newark office of the FBI. There was, I believe that's where they were from, but I know that's who was investigating this. But they had one of our surveillance teams they had a bunch of surveillance teams that were looking for these people because they had a description of who the bank robbers were. And so a bank robbery happened, and here's the problem, okay? They don't brief before the arrest, before this whole process. They should bring everybody in. Everybody should, just like you do in the operating room, you have eye contact with each other. You say, are there any questions here? You make sure that each person knows their job. You talk, and then they do a timeout where they talk to the patient, which I don't remember that happening before, but it happens now, and I think it's a great thing. But they didn't do this. And so they go out, and the surveillance team's in plain clothes. Of course, SWAT team, being the little paramilitary gearhounds that they are, they show up. The robbery goes down. They're chasing the robber. The surveillance team is. They get out, guns drawn. The SWAT team rolls up. One of the SWAT guys sees a guy with a shotgun in plain clothes, and he shoots and kills him. Well, that was one of the surveillance guys. He killed him.
Oh, my gosh.
And so...
No communication.
Nobody told them that these guys would be out roaming around in civilian clothes. That wasn't part of the brief. And so, you think that these things are being understood by everybody, but you know what they say, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And that's what happened in that case. And in the case of this, I can almost guarantee you that nobody has told Cuomo, you got to have somebody qualified. And de Blasio, I think he's just freaking out of it. He's an idiot. But yeah, and maybe even the president. Who knows what?
Well,
See, these people who are making big decisions right now that are stressed. I'm not saying anything bad about Dr. Fauci or the rest of them up there, but they can overlook these things.
yeah. Well, let me say this. I have to. Okay, I'm going to step out of the sort of the as one of your experts, if you will, in healthcare. I'm going to go into the political realm a little bit. I believe that it wouldn't matter if you had 5 experts who would say to Mr. Cuomo or a similar politician, look, we don't even have the capacity for running these ventilators. Why are you asking for 30,000?
Right.
I have a feeling that they would say, it's just a tool to snap at the president, and that's what I'm going to do because I have opportunity to go after him.
That could be.
Because it'll look like I'm fighting for New Yorkers.
Yeah, that very well could be. Who knows?
So I think there's a political play that it is foul because it pulls. What I don't like about it is it pulls the healthcare industry in, and the healthcare industry is now used as a tool for political gain. I don't like that. You use the facts, you take the facts, and you report the facts to the people no matter what. Now, the president and the team have said consistently, Jonathan, we sent 4,000 ventilators to New York. We sent 4,000 ventilators to New York. I don't know how many ventilators that they have already, but let's say they've doubled that because they have 3,000 beds. If they have 8,000 ventilators there, my next question for Mr. Cuomo is, how many ICU physicians do you have in the entire state that have not been infected and that are functional for you? Because I don't have that data.
Right.
But that would be a targeted and humiliating question if he cannot answer that. Because if he can't answer that, that's a problem, and that reflects his idiocy and his political gain.
But those people can't sit and watch. Let's say that there's 3,000 ICU beds. Let's say that each ICU has how many doctors? You know, I mean,
at least one.
Okay,
at least one.
So at least one. I mean, how many beds are in one ICU? You see what I mean? There's not enough doctors to run 6,000, 8,000 of these ventilators.
Right. Right, we have 60,000, essentially in the United States, we have 60,000 beds, ICUs. And if we have 60,000 ICU beds, we should have 60,000 ventilators that are there. Let's say we double that now or triple that need because we're going to start to have 1 or 2 floors above the ICU become makeshift ICUs. And we're going to bring ventilators up on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors because we need to expand the number of ICU availability. That's fine, but you've got to actually have you can't have one physician taking care of 28 patients, now take care of 117 patients.
Well, what is the number? How many ventilators can one person work?
In a standard ICU, and it's a little bit outside of my expertise, and maybe some of my colleagues who are ICU physicians will correct me on this, and they certainly should if I'm incorrect. For one intensive care unit with, we'll say, 28 rooms, each of which has a bed, that one physician can run 28 ventilators with the assistance of respiratory technicians who are about 4 or 5 of them walking around in order to make fine changes and to watch the patients, to carry out the orders, doing blood work every hour, every 2 or 3 hours sometimes.
So it's not a plug and play.
No, it's not. It's very customized because everybody, in an intensive care unit, you can have, and one day in an ICU, 4 people on ventilators and 24 people not on ventilators, but they're recovering from surgery or they have other illnesses. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you can have 23 of the 28 beds on ventilators. That's a very stressful day. And with COVID-19, I think you can multiply that by 4 in any given facility.
So they're not thinking this through. When they're asking for 30,000 ventilators, they're not thinking it through because you're not going to set up you just don't have the personnel to run 30,000.
You don't have the personnel. You don't have the beds. Yeah, absolutely correct. They're just looking. It's a political talking point for them, and a talking point, in my opinion, to attack the federal government, saying they're not providing needed sources. Now, my understanding too, for Mr. Cuomo, is about 4 years ago he had opportunity to purchase about 15,000 ventilators for his state. To put many in reserve and to replace some older and he refused them. He said, we're not going to have money for those. We're putting Obamacare principles and practices into play here, so we're focusing on that, which ironically is where the death panels, as we were talking about.
Right.
But I think that look, it's not the role of the federal government to make up for the errors of the governors and the states.
Right.
It's the role of the federal government to make resources available so that the states can do their job and do what's necessary to protect their people. In crisis, there's no reason for any governor, Republican, Democratic, Independent, young or old, to not be grateful for what our administration has done to address this problem. And I agree, Jonathan. Mr. Trump has said very positive things, but he's not a physician. I want the president to be positive. I want Dr. Fauci and his team to be very direct and say the worst is yet to come, because I believe the worst is yet to come.
Mm-hmm. No, I do too. I mean, I haven't looked at the death rate today, but I was watching TV and it was going up like, 50. Well, last night I looked at it, it was 822. Today it was 1,100 and something. And while I'm watching it, when it went up like 5.
That's absolutely true. And the good thing is our mortality rate in the United States is still relatively low. In Italy, it's almost 10%. So it's in the United States, it's around 1%. So we are still low in mortality, but the toll on the healthcare industry is going to last years, because we're going to have physicians that are dying.
Yeah.
We're going to have technicians that are dying. We're going to have nurses that are dying.
See, people don't believe that. People, I'm already seeing it on social media, because people have the patience of a gnat, and they have the attention span of a goldfish, and they literally believe that this is the flu. I mean, people are just constantly putting that out there and saying we lost this many people to the flu. This is nothing. They don't realize that had we not stopped the travel, had we not put people on lockdown and create this whole social distancing thing, that it could be astronomical right now. I mean, with all the places closed, and it's still at this number, imagine what it would be if we had just not done anything. I mean, this would be, and I went to the store today. I mean, I look like Darth Vader going there. I got my finally got my mask today, and
outstanding.
And unfortunately, I have a beard, so it doesn't really cover the bottom part of the beard, unfortunately. But it's one of the ones that wrap around. I look like what's that one guy from Batman that had the big thing on his face? You know what I'm talking?
I haven't seen that movie, but Kylo Ren is what comes to mind. Kylo Ren.
It kind of looks like that, yeah.
Kylo Ren with the Star Wars thing coming all the way around the face. Yeah.
So it kind of looks like that, and but doesn't cover my beard. But I have gloves on. I have the mask on. I go in. They have the things with the swabs, or not swabs, but the disinfectant rags that you can use, and they put them inside the store, which I think is stupid. So I go into the store, get those, come back out, swab down the cart where I'll be holding, even though I have rubber gloves on. And while I'm doing that, I'm watching all these people walk right next to me, grab a cart, walk right in, not washing their hand, not washing the thing off, not wearing gloves, no mask.
Amazing.
2-3 of them together, bumping into each other with their children in strollers. I was old people. I saw old people walking in there, and it was a fight to try to stay 6 feet away from people. I get all the groceries, come to the front, and I'm watching from way down, right? Mm-hmm. I'm watching people check out, standing next to each other with their carts bumping up against each other. And because they don't think it's real, or they think I'm not going to catch it.
They don't care.
They're stupid.
They don't care.
And here's here's the biggest problem of all. Okay. Minimization. People are minimizing. They have something, they minimize it. And so they don't believe. And I've seen this. Look, we do it in the military all the time. You get injured and you say, I just strained my back. Meanwhile, you got a bulging disc because you just took a huge fall, but you're not going to say anything about it because you don't want to, get booted out or get a medical discharge or something. So you're just like, eh. And people fight with that stuff for years. It takes a mental toll on because they're minimizing.
Well, so here's the value of having a society that has freedom and liberty. We have limited in our Constitution the federal government's ability to impose martial law, essentially to remove the personal liberties that are given to us by our Constitution. You know, you go to a communist nation like China, China's going to be able to lock it down. And if you go out and you start doing that, if you walk into a supermarket in China and you expect to bump into people without a mask, they'll put you in jail for 2 months, 5 months, 8 months, and they'll pull you out. Well, in the United States, we don't do that. So we're going to accept as the price of freedom and liberty, some sense of potential contagion. But those of us who are wiser, those of us who plan ahead, recognize that, and we compensate. I just put out a tip today on my website, Jonathan, that basically said, look, you should have inside clothes and outside clothes. We know that this virus does spread by particulate aerosolization. So it gets up in the atmosphere and it stays up in the air and you can inhale it. But the primary mechanism we discovered is on surfaces. So if a person walks behind me and coughs on my back and on my shoulders, and I touch my shoulder, adjust my shirt, and then rub my nose, I can get COVID-19. And it can last on surfaces, we learned recently, for up to 17 days. So look, so now I put the tip on. I said, look, if you come home, when you come home, not if you come home, when you come home, you walk into an area of your house and you essentially, in the morning before you left, you put another set of clothes hanging up there. You declothe, you get your shirt, your slacks off, your socks off, and your shoes, your outdoor shoes off, and you put your indoor clothes on. You take those shoes that were outside, you sanitize the bottom of them with a little bit of disinfectant spray, and you wash the clothes. Even if you go out 3 times during the day, every time you go out, the clothes that you wear to go out are sanitized. Now, we're not used to that here, but you know what? People who have children, Jonathan, with cystic fibrosis, where the very slightest bug in the lungs can produce a massive pneumonia for these kids, they do that all the time. So we have subsegments of our culture that has done that for many, many years. We just haven't appreciated it in the sense of having to deal with a pandemic. So our role, what you're doing with the experts here and what I'm doing in my little practice, is to be able to empower our patients and our communities to be able to make the right decisions and reduce their risk and the risk of their family.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you, let me think of what it was. I forget now. There's so much.
I took you for a ride there, didn't
Yeah, you did. And my mind is totally confused now, like I know everybody else is right now. I tell you what, let me take a break, get a drink, and we'll come right back with even more. You don't want to go away. You want to get all this show. There's so much information in this show. Hang in there. We'll be right back. I want you to think for a second about a nice spring day. You know, it's just starting to turn warm. Everybody's happy. And you go outside with your children. You take them out to the park, or maybe you're just around your house somewhere. And it's just a normal day. There's nothing extra crazy out there. For once, everything is calm. But are your children prepared for the worst? What happens if there's a bad guy that's hanging around and just watching what's going on at the playground? Do you know how many pedophiles live close to playgrounds? Probably not. It's not something most people think about, but they're there. Do you know how many children unfortunately get ran over by a car every year by parents who are not dummies? They're not on drugs. They're just preoccupied. And the child has never really grasped the concept of not being behind a vehicle. Well, all of these are lessons that are taught in The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Now, the book is all pictures, but in each picture it's several lessons, not just one. It's several lessons built into these pictures. And the parent gives the book to the child. Well, how does the child learn just from the pictures if there's no instruction? I'll tell you how. You go to teamlittlebigs.com, which is being built right now, and the lesson plans for the parent are there. So you'll be able to give the book to the child, get the lesson plans for yourself, and teach your child these important issues at a very young age through pictures. The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, Comes out April 7th. You can pre-order it now. Trust me, folks, there's nothing else out there like this. This is how you make your homeland secured. Go get it. The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. And let's get back to the show. I know as people listen to this, their minds are spinning because there's so much, it's useless information overload. That's what this is right now. And part of that has to do with social media. The rest of it has to do with politics in the mainstream media. And here's the problem with social media is that people think they know a lot more than they do. I've had several debates with people who have, they've gotten very inquisitive about viruses, and so they're reading a lot on it, and all of a sudden now they're experts on it, mm-hmm. And they're not experts. They haven't worked around viruses enough to know that things are possible for a virus to do things that have never happened before. Not every virus is the same. We don't know, right. Exactly what could actually happen here, and so. People are confused. They're upset. They don't like being inside. I think we've now reached that point where people that love each other are probably starting to have, real doubts about how deep their love is because they've been isolated for so long. And all that is really a side effect of being put into a room together for so long. But the other thing is the fear factor. And, this is the hard part about it. All of these things, though, that I'm telling you, all lead to ignorance is not knowing. This is okay. Again, I want to say these things. These are the Jonathan definitions, all right? You can go look in Webster's dictionary, and I've been lectured by people on social media how wrong I am about these definitions. But to me, ignorance is that you don't know. You don't know. You've never been told this way or that way. Stupidity is when you've been told and you choose to do it anyway.
Fair enough.
So I'm seeing a tremendous amount of stupidity.
I think that's a very appropriate and a very accurate description of those two words. And as a physician, it is, we care for our patients. We love our patients. We want them to succeed. We want them to be healthy. But, if I have a patient who says to me, yeah, that's great advice, doc, I don't think I'm going to take it. I've got other things on my mind and other priorities. Can't take it personally. Mm-hmm. I just have to adapt, adjust, and make sure that no matter what my patients decide, that those who want to take our advice, my advice, your advice, Jonathan, and they apply it aggressively. I think one other critical issue with this entire process in COVID-19, we don't have all the data accurately. We are still chasing our tail with this. This is brand new. It's a novel coronavirus. We haven't dealt with a pandemic for 7 years since H1N1 swine flu. We're brand new at this. And even the experts in the administration are trying to catch up and interpret data as it's coming in. So we have to, I believe, in the interest of the wellness for our country, economically and physically, we have to assume it's going to get worse and take whatever steps are necessary to be able to contain it and define it. So that as the data comes in, most of it will be retrospective. In other words, we're going to be able to look back a year from now and say, aha, we see now where the trends were. If we'd have done A, B, and C instead of D, E, and F, we probably would have done a little bit better. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But for goodness sake, in the face of this catastrophe, in this pandemic, it is unreasonable to compare it with influenza. Influenza, we've known for years. It kills 0.5% of the people on average. We have 40 to 60 million people infected in the United States every year, and we have between 17,000 and 25,000 deaths. It hasn't changed for decades. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same. But we know that this virus has a capacity for killing that is several orders of magnitude higher, 2%, 10%. So it is a deadly virus. And yes, it should be categorized separately. You cannot compare it to influenza. Listen, 40% of my patients, when I tell them they need a flu shot, look at me and go, don't need it, never had it, don't get sick, I have a good immune system. And I just shake my head and say, please get
I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people, Doc.
not anymore, Jonathan, right? Not anymore, right?
I guess not now. But yeah, you're exactly right. Well, let me ask you this though. This I think is a good way to look at it as well. When you look at the flu, it is largely, when you look at the numbers, even though it has a moderate death rate that goes with it, overall, with the sheer number of people that get it every year, the majority of those people, their bodies fight through it. But when you look at this one, even though there's large numbers of people that are getting better, the fight is not easier, and the death rate is like, that's the ultimate thing here, is that it seems like people either have little to no symptoms or it's near death or death.
Well, for influenza, Jonathan?
No. For COVID, with
Okay.
influenza,
Yes.
people have, everybody knows the flu. It's kind of a gut punch, and most people don't go to the point where they're dying. It's a gut punch. But the fact is that the majority of people in the country get the flu.
Okay, so I'm going to correct you a little bit here on your own show. I hope you don't hang up on me.
No. I think I may be in agreement with you. I just said it wrong. But go ahead.
Okay, so it's not just a gut punch. So people will say, in a colloquial fashion, I had a touch of the flu. There is no such thing as a touch of the flu.
Yeah.
Influenza is a 2 to 3 week illness that is catastrophic. It produces, and the best way to think about it is economically, more than $30 billion in lost wages every year. I mean, it's massive. And it does kill. And interestingly, there is a difference between influenza and COVID-19, which is beneficial in the current situation, in that there is a U-shaped mortality curve with influenza. The very young, under the age of 2, 8% of kids die. This is statistics from back in 2017. And over the age of 75, it kills about 20% of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a U-shaped mortality curve. Interestingly, although we have had now reported cases of COVID-19 infection in the pediatric population, which is starting to emerge,
right,
we don't see the mortality in the kids. We see it in the very old, and particularly old with cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Those are the big risk factors. So if your listeners out there have heart disease, either they've had heart attacks or they have congestive heart failure or they have diabetes, even those who are smokers, believe it or not, are not in the highest risk group. And I probably shouldn't.
You're talking about for COVID. You're talking about for COVID-19.
For COVID-19. Yeah. Yes, for COVID-19. For those patients, for goodness sakes, please apply the principles that the administration is putting forth. If you have any questions about what you can do, my website has information about how to protect yourself, how to plan for and live your daily life essentially as best possible by reducing your risk for COVID-19, because those are the people that are going to be in the emergency room suddenly, as you say, Jonathan, turning on really quick with illness within 5 days, shortness of breath, can't catch the breath, low oxygen levels, adult respiratory distress syndrome, which, as we talked in a previous show, you can see on a chest x-ray very clearly, and then on a respirator within 10 days, and then fighting for your life. So it's heart disease and diabetes that put you at the greater risk, along with your age.
Now, well, let me just correct what I was saying earlier about a gut punch. Now, what I'm talking about is the majority of people that I know that have had the flu, that are adults or were teenagers, it was horrible. They had it for a couple of weeks, but they get over it and they go on with their lives. So it's not easy by any means. The flu sucks, and it really makes people lose work, and some people die from it. But what I'm saying is the perception is that it's a gut punch, but you're probably not going to die from it. But the difference,
that's true.
But what the difference here is with this flu, or not this flu, with this disease, is that from all the reporting I've seen, people have either had mild symptoms or they've been on the edge of death. It's not just I had a gut punch for a couple of weeks and I sweated it out and I'm okay now. It's that I thought I was going to die and now I'm having trouble breathing, or I had nothing, very little.
I think that's true. Absolutely true. I agree with that.
And so
Completely,
people,
100%.
and so people think because the numbers aren't that high that this just must not be that bad, because it seems like they always default to the people. And see, I'm totally opposite. These people, it seems like majority of people default to the person that, they had it, but it wasn't that big a deal and they're recovered now. And everybody says, see, it's not that big. And you say, okay, but what about these people who, and this doesn't typically happen with the flu unless I'm wrong, but the people that have COVID, it goes from 0 to 1,000 in 3 days.
Very fast. You're absolutely right. And then to make it even worse is that those people who are spreading it are without symptoms because they're healthy for weeks, for a couple of weeks at a time. They may have a little congestion, a mild cough, and as they touch their hands and they grab a railing and then the next person grabs the railing and rubs their nose, they don't even know that they're seeding it to the rest of the population. So it's as though it's a silent killer, but when it emerges with a vengeance. It comes out big.
Yes. And just as dangerous is the information that people are putting out that haven't taken all this into consideration, especially, here's the best, and I'm shocked at the people who write me and ask me this. Good friends, close friends, it is not 5G. Right. I don't know. We're going to have a special doc. You need to find somebody who knows about 5G, this new 5G with the phones, how they're saying it's causing all these people to be sick. I don't know whether that's true or not. I doubt very seriously that things get approved in this country with all the liberals that are in. One good thing about the liberals is if there's anything dangerous, they're going to tell everybody about it. They can't keep their mouth shut. So, right. The CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, they're all full of liberals. So if 5G was as dangerous as all these conspiracy theorists believe, I'm sure somebody would have told us by now. But so there's people that are saying and spreading the rumor that Wuhan, China is where it's the first city in the world where the entire city is 5G. And now they're saying that wherever 5G is at in the world, it's this quote unquote virus is spreading. That's what they're saying.
I mean, this is so sensational. This is amazing. And it's sometimes a lot easier to just get caught up in conspiracies than it is to do the very basics for healthy living. My wife and I in our household and our daughters in their households, they are applying the principles of general health and wellness now in such a way that if they do it the rest of their life, they're going to be really healthy. And I know they're going to have 5G phones. Yeah. At some point, we're going to have 5G phones, but it's not going to cause them to be more susceptible to these type of viri. It's going to actually cause them to be a lot healthier in the long run. So we got to take that for what it is, learn to actually adapt as a culture, as a society, not get caught up in theories and unsubstantiated rumors, and simply stick to the basics of healthy living.
Yeah. One other thing that's on my mind before I forget it, that people have to do, and I know you'll back me up on this, and I'm going to give everybody an example of why you need to do this. Always learn from my mistakes. So I have a whole process of when I go to the store, and I've only been to the grocery store twice since this whole lockdown went on. So I know if I fully stock the fridge, it takes about 2 weeks to run out of food. And I like cottage cheese like nobody's business. I mean, Friendship cottage cheese, if they want to sponsor this show, I will sell the crap out of Friendship cottage cheese. Love it.
I like to hear that.
Yeah. So they, and I don't eat much fruit anymore. I know you told me to back off on the fruit. So it's hard for me because I love watermelon, but anyway, that's a whole nother side story. But, so I have this process of when I go there, I get all my stuff ready. We have the bags that we reuse to get the groceries. Cause in New York, you have to, now that you have to pay for the plastic bags. So everybody brings these other bags, or they don't even have plastic bags in some places. So you keep those in the trunk. And then, and actually, I think everywhere right now, that might be a good idea. So you put those in the trunk. I go and get in the car. And when I get to the store, I put my gloves on. Or first of all, when I get in the car, I've got these super sanitizer things. I sanitize everything, steering wheel, all that stuff. Get in the car, get there, put my gloves on, put my mask on, my hat, my sunglasses. And I go in there and do and when I go there, I get, before I touch the cart, I go and get those sanitary wipes, or I take them with me, and I wipe that down. Then, and if there's people standing there, I wait for them to go before I go up to the cart. And then I get the cart, I go in there, I shop, I do my things. If it's starting to get busy, I either hurry up or I just sit to the side and let people go by. And then I get my stuff. And then I wait in line, but because I don't do self-checkout. I did, but it seems like everybody's packed in there. So I get back and I wait. I put the space between me and the person in front of me, a pretty good space. And if I have to, I'll put the cart behind me so that people don't get close to me there.
Good for you.
Once I go through, go ahead. Say
Brilliant.
again.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
keep going.
So once I get through, I put all the bags in there in the cart. I wheel the cart out. Make sure I don't get too close to the cashier, because now, I mean, God bless these people, but they're like you know how they say that the toilet seat's not as dirty as the kitchen sink. They're like the kitchen sink now. All the people that come by come right by them. So I don't get too close to them. Take the groceries out, put them in the trunk, not in the front of the car. Put them in the trunk, take them home, and then get all the bags out, set them on the porch. I have Lysol right there, and I systematically unload the bags, spray them with Lysol. Everything that's in there, I spray it with Lysol. Put them in the shopping cart, or not shopping cart, put them in the laundry basket, and then carry the laundry basket inside. But here's the problem, is that you have to take your shoes off when you go inside, because who knows who sneezed all over that floor, did all these things. That's where I forgot. So I'm walking around all over the place with shoes on. Yep. So you have to write this list down and follow it, just like you're a pilot getting ready to fly, because I did all these things, and contrary to what people think, Lysol sprayed on your canned foods or whatever is not going to kill you. I even sprayed the container that my blueberries and stuff came in, but listen, some gets on the blueberries, it's not going to kill me. A little bit of dried Lysol.
You're going to wash the blueberry. You're going to wash the blueberries anyway. You're going to put them under running water.
Sure.
Listen, the only thing I would add to that for you, Jonathan, that's perfect. What you described is an excellent approach. It won't completely 100% reduce your risk or mitigate your risk for getting COVID-19, but you have prevented to a large degree the risk for having. You should have inside clothes and outside clothes. So what you do before you go out, you put a shirt and slacks and indoor shoes right in there in the inside of the door. You hang them on a hanger. So when you get the groceries in and you put them in the laundry baskets as you're outside, last thing you do when you come in, take your shirt off, your slacks off, your shoes off, put them in a bag, and then go ahead and put your new shirt on, your indoor shirt on, your indoor slacks on, your indoor shoes on, and you go ahead and bring your groceries in. Then you go back, you pick up the bag, launder your shirt and your slacks that you just wore outside, and sanitize the bottom of your shoes and the top of your shoes. You do that, and that takes time. It takes effort. It's meticulous, but you have other family members that you're protecting as well, not just yourself, but other people that you're responsible to. I just put that tip out today on my website, specifically about indoor clothes and outdoor clothes.
Here's the other thing I forgot to say. So when I get back in the car, before I even get in the car, right, when I put the groceries in the trunk and I open the door, I take my gloves off, and I take them off where I'm rolling them, so the the outside never touches my hands. And then I have a plastic bag that I put those in. I get in, I take the sanitizer wipes, wipe the inside of the car down and my hands, and then put the face mask to the side or put it in my pocket. And then, which I guess now I should just put it to the side. And then, what was the other thing the other thing is, when you unload your grocery bags, go put those back in the trunk of your car. And then I sprayed all that with Lysol. Don't take those into your house.
In your house. Correct. Perfect.
Because all these, I was sitting there and physically watching people with no gloves, and here I am taking all these steps, right? I'm looking, so it's me, and there's probably 100 people in that grocery store. I saw maybe two other people with masks on. They didn't have gloves on, and I'm watching all of these people, and then there's me fully kitted up with this whole process that I go through, and I watch people pick cans up, look at them, put it back down, meat, everything else.
If 99% of the people do what you do in New York, Governor Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, would take credit for actually shutting down the process and the spread of this disease, but it's up to the people to do it. If 99% of the people did it, but we're never going to get there. This, for some people, would be A, too difficult, B, a sense of, oh, I'm a germaphobe and that's ridiculous, not worth it, I don't believe it. But the truth of the matter is, it's up to us as a culture to be able to control this outbreak. And far more of the people now in our country have COVID-19 and have no clue where they got it than are those who have COVID-19 and they say, oh, I know exactly where I got it. I went to the hospital to visit my Aunt Ginny, and my Aunt Ginny had it, and I was with her for 20 minutes, and she was breathing in my face. That's not happening anymore. People are positive, and they have no idea where they got it. And you know where they got it? Probably from the grocery store.
Or mail.
Probably from places or mail. Just like that, on the boxes on the outside.
Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely right.
I've been, mail comes, use Lysol.
Yep.
It is what it is. I mean, we just don't know who's touching all this stuff. We don't know.
Sneezing on it or coughing on it.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
All right, Doc. Hey, listen, I appreciate it very much, and we'll keep practicing what you said. I think this would be a good episode for you to put up on your website. This is a good one.
I sure will, Jonathan. It's great to be with you. These conversations are exactly what our nation needs to hear, and I hope your listeners take to heart what we've talked about today, because we have control of stopping this pandemic here in the country, and it's up to us to do it.
Yeah, and it comes in waves, so we got to get used to this. That's the other thing.
Right.
All right, God bless you, brother. Thank you very much.
Jonathan, my pleasure. Talk to you soon.
You got it. And that, my friends, is a wrap. Hope that you got a lot out of this show. As always, I try to bring you the truth. I will bring you the truth. I will bring you real information without the ideological spin. Look, I'm a conservative person. There's no doubt about it. But when I look into the stories, I'm looking for what's most effective, what the real answers are, and where the lies are located. And we're going to weave our way through that and bring you the truth. That's what this show's all about. Everybody's talking about Corona. I guess I had to talk about Corona. But Dr. Lucarini is an incredible doctor, and the information he's given you can make a difference in your life if you follow it. Trust me, folks, I'm not going to lead you astray. And I may have a show on Saturday, so listen up. I may have one on Sunday, and every day's like Friday now, so might as well just keep pushing it out there. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. Remember, folks, I love you. My Lord Jesus loves you. May he convict your heart wherever you are. Bring it to your knees so he can make you better. That is the truth. Peace, and we're out of here. Stop eating so much. You're not on vacation. Well, you kind of are. Peace.